Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Mommy Loves to Read. I'm Olivia and thank you for joining me today. So today I am here to bring you guys another book review of a book that I just finished and it's so amazing and I love it, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. So the book that I am talking about is The Warmth of Other Sun by Isabel Wilkerson. This book was amazing. I loved it so much. I want to read it again and again. But it's a really big book, so I don't know how often I'm actually going to do that. But it is an amazing book. So let me give you a little facts about this book. Like I said, it's The Warmth of Other Sun. It's by Isabel Wilkerson. That's like a tongue twister. It has about 622 pages in this book. But in order to read the book, it's only about 543. The rest is just kind of like acknowledgments and things like that. So it is a big book, but one thing that I liked about this book, even though it's a huge book, nothing in it was kind of like, I could have lived without that, or why did you put that, or nothing in it was like repetitive. Like everything in it was stuff that was good. Like every part of the book was good. You wanted to read it and read it and read it. Once I picked this up, I didn't put it down. So excuse me, I'm sorry. It was a really good book. So let me give you some facts about this book. Like I said, it's a big book. It has 622 pages. This book doesn't have chapters, it has sections. So it has the book is broken down into 5 sections, and each of those 5 sections has subsections. It's written about 3 characters during the Great Migration. That is what this book is about. And one thing that I loved about this book is I feel like not only was it entertaining to read, but it was definitely like an educational tool. Before reading this book, I thought I knew a lot about the Great Migration, and like after reading this book, I'm like, you didn't know anything. So this book has really taught me a lot. Something else I liked about this book, some of the things that they talk about in this book, that events and things like that happened during the Great Migration, they're actually real events. So I like that you could go back and you can look these things up and find out and actually read like news articles about things that they're talking about in this book. So that's really good. So the book follows 3 main characters: Ida Mae, who is from Mississippi and she relocates to Chicago; George, who is from Florida and he relocates to New York City; and then Robert, who is originally from Louisiana, and he relocates to California. So they all went to the north, but they all definitely went to very different cities in the north, and they all had different reasons for leaving, different reasons for leaving the South. And one thing that I really learned from this book was I knew about Jim Crow, and I knew like why a lot of people left the South, but one thing that stuck out to me with this book was how Jim Crow was, what's the word I'm looking for? Jim Crow, the way it was, the laws were abided by were different in every state. So like in Mississippi, you had your own set of Jim Crow laws that maybe if you went to Florida, something that was legal in Mississippi wasn't legal in Florida, and something that was legal in Florida wasn't something that you can do in Mississippi. So I thought that was very interesting, seeing how each of the people navigated their lives and how each of them were almost living in a different set of laws. And also one thing that stuck out to me was when the people did leave to go to the north, the thing that I kept getting, or like if you look through my book, the thing that I kept writing and just thinking about is how they were almost like immigrants coming from a foreign country going to somewhere new. Everything in the north was so different for them, you know, like, and they stuck out so much like sore thumbs, from the way that they talked to the way that they dressed. Like if someone saw them, they could spot them and say, wow, you're not from here. And just seeing how they had to learn to assimilate to the culture of the north, being from the South, and how each character did that. They all kind of had their own way of doing it. Ida Mae did it in a way where she kept those parts of her that were from the South that she loved, but she also adapted to, you know, life in Chicago. And then when you had George also, he stayed true to who he was as a person, but he adapted to life in New York. And then Robert, he was the one character in the book, he left everything behind about Louisiana. He was like, once he left the South, he wanted to just like wash his hands of the South and be done. So seeing him is very different from seeing the other two, and just how they navigated life and how throughout their journey, how they grew and how they changed. So that was very interesting to me. What I liked most about this book was just everything that I learned. I felt like after reading this book, I have so much information, and if someone was to ask me about the Great Migration, I could be like, okay, sit down, let me tell you everything that I know. And a lot of it comes from this book. I had one quote in this book that was my favorite quote. Let me find it. It's actually on, if you are someone who reads this book, it is going to be on page 438. It says, and this is talking about all the people who were a part of the Great Migration as a whole. So it says, they did not ask to be accepted, but declared themselves the Americans that perhaps few others recognized, but they had always been deep within their hearts. And that really stuck out to me because, like I said, throughout this book, you really saw the struggle of how the people who did leave the South, they were leaving because, you know, the Jim Crow and how they were being treated, but mostly they were leaving because they just wanted to be treated as humans. It's not like they were asking for this great thing. They just wanted to be treated as humans, to have the right to work and not be cheated out of their money, to have the right to send their children to great schools, to have the right to feel safe within their home, to have the right to be treated as adults, as men and women. And that's what a lot of them were moving to the North to find. And so that was the one thing that like stuck out to me throughout this book. Like, they were resilient, they never gave up, and they knew what they were fighting for, and they were like, we're gonna get it. So I really love that about this book. So yes, it was just amazing. So if anyone is looking for a really good book to read, I would recommend this book. Like I said, this is like a gem, and I'm so glad that I found it. I'm so glad that I read it. This is definitely one of those books I feel like you're going to want to buy. I did buy this book, and I'm glad I did because, one, like I said, I feel like this is a book that I will read again. Maybe not soon because it's so big, but I will eventually read it again. But it's also one of those books you're going to want to mark and highlight and just really like take your notes throughout the book because there's so much in this book. You just want to take it all in. So I would definitely recommend that you buy this book. And like I said, I feel like this book is a great read for anyone, especially if you're wanting to learn more about the Great Migration. I think you should definitely look into this, especially if you're someone who's African American. I feel like you can benefit so much from this, and just seeing how the Great Migration changed the landscape of like the United States is one thing that I learned from this book. And then also another thing before I go, I learned how the Great Migration, like, it didn't end until 1970. So it started in like the 30s and went all the way up to 1970. So it's like a really long time to, you know, go and go and go. And just to see like how people through all those decades were still searching for something that they didn't have in the South, which was, you know, human rights. So yes, I think if you're interested, you should definitely check this book out. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hope I wasn't rambling on too much. But yes, thank you so much for joining me today. If you have read this book, comment down below. Let's start a conversation and let me see what you think and how you. Thank you for joining me, and until next time, bye.